Get on the train before it leaves the station. The truth train is coming, gonna run them down, run them down.
Hello there, everybody. How you doing? Okay, we're here today, and unfortunately, this didn't work out quite the way I had hoped. I had a little chat with Millbillie and Paul, and we talked about Kratz and Cuss Road. Really long chat, and I was gonna break it up into 2 videos and everything, but it turns out my audio didn't get recorded on it. So, what I'm gonna do is, because Paul and Millbillie still had a lot of brilliant things to say, I'm gonna go ahead and play the clips for you, but I'm gonna introduce it, and I'm gonna kind of jump in and kind of insert what I was talking about in certain points, and to put their comments, more into context. So, I'm so sorry about that. I'm really sorry about this. It would have been really nice if it could have just been the little round robin discussion that we had. But unfortunately, because of a mistake in a setting in the software, I didn't get my audio, and it's unfortunate. But do our best here. Like I said, Paul and Millbillie still had a lot of brilliant things to say, and you're still going to get to hear that. And I'll be here along the way. So here we go. Let's go ahead, and this is the opening bit where we were just talking about Kratz and stuff, and I hit record, and we were just talking about things, and just talking about stuff. So here it is, the beginning opening segment, and then we'll come on back.
Out. He's dirty.
I mean, sorry, I was going to say, for me, it's a little bit like, the Green Bay Packers. They make it to the Super Bowl. For some reason, the officials can't make it, so they invite season ticket holders of the Green Bay Packers to be the officials for the game. It's like, isn't it? It's like, why even bother playing the fucking game? Because you know who's going to win.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to swear, by the way, but you know what I mean? It's like, it's so twisted in his favor anyway, but he has to twist it even further, because he just wants to, absolutely take the mick out of the system. Why? Because he's allowed to. Why do dogs lick between their legs? Because they can do. Exactly. He did it because he could, because there's nothing to stop him.
Okay, so obviously there we were talking about the prize, Ken Kratz, and how he twists and manipulates and things, and that's his nature. It's part of why he is this. This is about the impropriety of agents of the state, and within the prosecution and the conviction of Stephen Avery. This is focusing on that impropriety that goes up and down the ladder, and obviously Ken Kratz, his questionable tactics and manipulations are all things that taint the prosecution of Stephen Avery. I mean, it all goes together. There's many things working together here, not just one thing. It's not just Ken Kratz's unethical behavior and immoral, fortitude, but it's other things, many other things, as you guys have seen in the videos I've already done. So yeah, that's what we're talking about today. Ken Kratz. We're talking about the impropriety involving, with Ken Kratz, and we're going to be talking also about a bit about Cuss Road, and we're mixing these two together over 2 nights. So what we're gonna hear now is Millbillie's going to point out something that he's always found interesting regarding things that they didn't get out of the RAV, but then something else they did take that had nothing to do with anything that he always thought was interesting. So here we go.
Well, like I said, why do they leave the panels in her car, but then they remove the rear door from the Suzuki? They take a piece of a car that has nothing of significant evidence whatsoever, but then they leave the panels that could have been removed from the car and preserved, but they choose to leave everything. Like, instead of removing the whole seats from the car, why do they first cut out little pieces and then they go back and remove all the fabric? The way they do things is just way they don't document things.
So when the talking about not documenting things got us talking about Colburn and how he's clearly involved in this investigation at every step of the way and everything. But what do we have from him in the investigation reports? Oh, I don't know, like a paragraph or two, somewhere on one page in the entire thing. So we got to talking about that, and then it brought on this conversation between Paul and Millbillie.
Oh, and Paul, you know Heather that died in the car accident?
Yeah.
Guess who's the responding officer?
Oh, either Lenk or Colburn.
Colburn.
Yeah.
They talk about it. Colburn's the cop. The cop that found the keys was the one that was responding to the accident.
Yeah.
That's it's crazy. She had 5 kids.
And I wonder how long it took him to write a report on that one.
Yeah. Well, they called the coroner. Just like when Corey Avery died, they called the coroner then.
Yeah.
How did, like, Earl states that not even 15, 20 minutes after they found the car, the Kratz is there. How did he get there so fast? How did they all get there so fast? If they're all in Calumet, that's quite a far drive. It's at least a 30-minute drive.
All right. So what I went on to say after that was, I said, well, yeah, you know, that's you're probably right, Millbillie, because we know that we have that call from, you know, the morning of the 5th where we have Wiegert talking about there's been a change in plans. The boss wants us to do something. Seems real kind of odd, you know, the way he's wording it and what he's he's talking vaguely. So it just seems rather strange. And then, you know, Earl's noticing that Kratz and, you know, like all these people from Calumet are showing up within 15 minutes of the RAV4 being found. And so, yeah, that is a little strange because Calumet isn't just, you know, right there. So, yeah, it's interesting. But, so anyways, that's basically what I brought up, is that phone call where they talked about the change of plans and boss wants us to do something thing. And then we moved on to this subject.
I think it gets even better when you consider the fact that literally a couple of months before it all blew up in his face, he was actually sending letters with a CV to various universities wanting to be their professor of criminology or whatever, you know, to do with the law and everything. Imagine him being let loose in a campus.
Oh, he'd probably be in prison now.
It was at this point that I mentioned that actually Ken Kratz was getting ready to make a run for Congress when the sexting scandal came out. He was actually getting prepared to make a run for Congress. So I brought that up at this point. And so here we go.
Well, that was off the back of obviously the convicting Stephen Avery, because I think one of my favorite and most interesting letters is the one that he sends, the email he sends. I think it's to Tom Fallon, because he sees Tom Fallon as being on his side within the DOJ, doesn't he? And it's titled, "What can the DOJ do to thank Ken Kratz for his 25 years of dedicated service to this office?" You know. And then he goes on and talks about how, you know, they shouldn't even be looking at him because he's such a wonderful person. I've made a couple of notes. Millbillie, you touched on the fact that whenever Ken Kratz is asked a question, what he does is he cherry picks one of those questions, and then he'll ask his own question based on that. He will never answer a direct question. Trust me, I was Twitter emailing. I did that for about 2 months with him.
He does it all the time.
Yeah.
Not even in the court cases, when he's doing interviews with people on TV.
That's right. Deflect. In fact, about the only thing that he actually came out and said was basically, "Will you buy my book?" And I was telling him, "No way, Jose, I'm not buying your book." But that's all he was interested in with me was, you know, trying to say, "Oh well, how do you explain this This accounts of the Andy Colburn being questioned about the finding of the key. How do you, and the phone call, how do you compare this with that, with that, with that? And I'm like, Ken, the bottom line is, no matter what editing took place within the documentary Making a Murderer, the fact is Andy Colburn knew exactly where that car was. He was told exactly where that car was by Kevin Ramlow.
No, I want to know why Dean and Jerry did not try to find, or even Kathleen as well, try to find out who entered Teresa's info in the Manitowoc County CAD system. Who entered the green RAV4? Who entered her as kidnapped? Well, you look at the phone records we have from the sheriff's department for that day. Somebody entered her info into the computer. We hear Jacobs running the 27, which is looking up the history for her. That has nothing to do with her car. That's just her. So somebody from Manitowoc actually entered her info with her car in their CAD system as their vehicle being in custody, the 3rd. And it's like at 1632 or no 1832, it's dispositioned into the CAD system. At some time later, the call is timed out and then it's reopened again.
Right.
But I don't know. I've been all over the time mode for the 3rd, and I'm slowly piecing things together. But there's 2.5 hours missing for both departments. What were they doing? Dieterine says he's leaving to go to Manitowoc, but then when Wiegert's looking for him, he talks to Pago, and Pago says, "Oh, he's standing right next to me." But he just told the dispatcher about 10 minutes earlier that he was en route to Manitowoc. I know that Stephen Avery and Chuck leave to go to Menards around 7 p.m. He's talking to Jody until 5:54. So Colborn, obviously, before they left to go to Menards, he told Bobby and Blaine about Colborn coming. Asked them both if they want to come to Menards. Bobby says he has something to do. Blaine goes with. They leave at least latest at 7 p.m. But Colborn had to be there he gets off the phone with Jody, and they leave to go. Because after Colborn comes, Steven then goes down by Barb, removes the trailer, cuts his hand. That's when he bleeds in the sink. He initially cut his hand open the weekend prior when he was loading the sheet metal onto the back of the wrecker. So that phone, Colborn had to be there between 6 and at least 6:30. So if Colborn's there between 6:30, why does it take him 3 hours to go to Zipperers? When he would have drove past there going to and from the sheriff's department, going to Avery's.
Okay, so those are a lot of the questions that Millbillie has about Colburn. That's what the conversation was kind of going there with, and stuff like that. So now we're going to move into, the Ken Kratz again. So it's going to be, talking a little bit about Kratz here. So here we go.
Yeah, and he tries to claim that the bones found in the gravel pit were found right on the other side of Steven's property. Like he threw them in his backyard. No, he tries to suggest that after they burned her in the burn pit, he took some of the bones and he threw them in the quarry right next to his yard. There's no bones, like in his book.
Yeah.
His 2 chapters he wrote, he says that there was bones found near Cuss Road. Where's this documented? It's not documented anywhere that I can find. Manitowoc doesn't even mention Cuss Road. They talk about White Cedar. Yeah. And Queso spends probably about 3 paragraphs on it. There's no mention of them being there on the 8th whatsoever. They mentioned it on the 7th. We got all these dog reports from the 7th. All these photos we just got are from the day after it's discovered, not the day of. So the crime lab was there the day after everything had been already removed and replanted on Stephen Avery's property.
Okay, and then at this point we get into talking about Cuss Road and the activity over there, and obviously Millbillie shares some of the things that he's learned from listening to these, around 800 calls that are out there. So, so here he goes talking a little bit about Cuss Road.
Why didn't they do that same investigation they had there on his burn pit? Obviously, they found something of significance there that they called all them people there. I mean, the Wisconsin State Patrol was there from the 5th through the whole day. They were there the whole time. We have photos in Manitowoc storage, evidence storage, of Cuss Road the day before on the 7th. You can see it in the case of the photos we got. They have pictures of pictures. They have pictures of them outside the evidence room, them going in the room, and then them taking document pictures of all the evidence in there. The vial container with everything in it, the blood vial, the styrofoam container, the box, photos, aerial photos of Cuss Road. And all dogs, they go away from the Avery property. Just like in Kratch's book, he states, well, the dogs went from Stephen Avery's to Cuss Road. Yeah, but it's not mentioned that the dogs did not get onto an intense track until they got by the berm where the brush was, in between the field and the back of his property. The dog, Loof heads towards Cuss Road, tries going past the barrier tape that we see, and they tell them, get back. They send Loof away. Bring Loof back a couple hours later, and then they Loof go in there. Just by the dispatch logs, all the transmissions I've heard, the dispatch calls the queso talking about they overheard on a scanner they found a body. Mm. This coincides with the time that Bushman is missing. He signs in the morning, never signs out, and then signs back in at 1:30.
Okay, I just want to break in here real quick to talk about Michael Bushman. I cannot really say it enough. It is damn odd and just bad decision making to have been bringing in retired Manitowoc County Sheriff Department, deputies like Michael Bushman, who were actually on the arrest party for Stephen Avery back in 1985. I mean, you're letting somebody who was on the arrest party for Stephen's original wrongful conviction take part in this investigation? You're bringing them out of retirement? Okay. And yet you're barring the coroner, who was going to bring in a forensic anthropologist, which is what you needed there. But never mind that, because you didn't care. You barred the coroner, and actually the Manitowoc County coroner is literally the one department at Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department that didn't have a conflict of interest with Stephen's 1985 case, because Penny Burnson wasn't dead. You don't need a coroner when there's nobody dead. So it's literally the one department that has no conflict of interest, and yet it's barred. So I think that's interesting when you look at the fact that they had a retired Manitowoc County Sheriff deputy who was on Stephen's original arrest party in 1985, brought out of retirement and hanging about and having and creating a buzz over on Cuss Road on November 7th, one day before the cremains are found in Stephen Avery's burn pit. So, anyways, all right, here we go.
The dog tracks go from that burn or that burial site location, go through the deer camp on to Q. Is that the same route the ambulance took when they left with her body? I'm almost convinced they found her body there. They tell Stephen 5 times, we found her body. The dogs found her body. We found her body. The dog took us where the plates were. The dog took us to where she was. We know how the car got there. The car came through the field, went through the deer camp, went in through the back pit. But then when they talked to Brendan, it's a completely different story how it got there. They start questioning about what do you do with the car? Oh, he put the gun in it. No, we're not worried about that. What did you do with the car? Did you do something with the car? Did he go underneath? They were leading him.
All the time.
Even Avery his bond was going through. He was about to be released until his trial. That's why they fucking went after Brendan.
Mm.
They tried everything and they could to get Jody to flip.
Mm-hmm.
They showed her letters that
So at this point, I begin to agree with Millbillie that yes, absolutely, they were desperate. They were flailing. When they eventually went after Brendan because they had been trying to browbeat Jody, doing some very disturbing things there, asking her about her and Steven's sex life and insinuating things and pushing her to say things that are not in Steven's favor, and being generally bullies and everything. So she eventually told the jail not to let them back in, and so they were left looking for something, and that's when they focused their eyes on the Dassey boys and ultimately Brendan. But you gotta understand the reason why they got there, because they knew that every piece of evidence had issues. There was problems with the way it was found, why it was found, how much of it was found, all the various things. Like, for instance, the bones in Stephen Avery's burn pit. This is supposed to be the primary burn location where Teresa Halbach's body was burned. But there's only 2/5 of her there. Less than half. That's 40%. 2/5. So that's a problem, because it's like, wait, if that's the primary burn site, then why is there only 2/5 of what you would expect from a body like Teresa's? Is at her weight and size and everything, what approximately that would be. And so what they found was only 2/5 of what they should have had. So that's an issue. You got the RAV4 being called in early and all that sort of stuff, right? And everything that's going on with it. As I talked about earlier in this video that you guys didn't get to see because my audio wasn't recorded. One of the things Ken Kratz did at trial was he tried to insinuate that A23, which was a blood spot on the exterior of the RAV tailgate, he tried to assert that A23 was Steven's blood in a slideshow that he had playing while he was doing his opening argument. And next to that little blood spot, he had a little arrow and it said Stephen Avery's blood. So he was saying that Stephen Avery's blood was on the outside of the cargo door of the RAV4. Okay? It's not true. And Jerry even proved it, because Sherry Culhane on the stand said, no, A23 was not Stephen Avery. It wasn't Stephen Avery. You have the key being found by Lincoln Colburn and Kucharski, suggesting that aliens could have put it there. I mean, it's just on and on and on. And the magic bullet that somehow gets missed in the week that they're there in November, and after Fassbender and Wiegert are bullying Brendan to say things happened in the garage. So Brendan says that they shot her in the garage after he'd already said they did it out by the fire pit previously upon being bullied and pushed to say things. So now he moves it to the garage, and what do you know, the next day they go to the garage and poof, they find a magic bullet sitting on top of the concrete dust, shiny, and on top of the concrete dust from when they jackhammered the floor. And it's sitting on top. And it has no concrete dust on it. It has a little bowl shape on top, and there's no concrete dust on this bullet. It's just sitting on top of the concrete dust. So, very bizarre. And so all the pieces of evidence in this case have these kind of problems. And they knew that. And that was what was making them so desperate. And that was what's making Ken Kratz, have to play all of these various games. But he's well suited for it. He does it well. Not that that's a good thing, but that is what he does well. being manipulative and kind of generally dishonest. That's all part of who he is, and that's pretty clear when you look at his his actions. So that's the kind of things that King Kratz does about A23 and even CX, that the they were never sent to the FBI, and that would most likely be because if they were sent to the FBI, the results that came back would most likely lead away from Stephen Avery, and that's actually, I mean, that's highly possible in my opinion. That's totally possible. So that, I mean, I wouldn't put it past them. I'll put it that way. So, so yeah, those were the things we were talking about, and all that sort of stuff. So here we go with the next little segment.
Listening to these jails calls gives you a way more perspective of what's going on. Like, he should have never stopped his lawsuit.
No.
That was his first mistake. But that's what they wanted. They wanted him to stop the depositions, and they won. They got exactly what they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time he realized it, it was too late.
Yeah, I mean, partly because of it, because his own lawyer was saying this is what we're negotiating for you, and I get the impression that Steve Glynn was quite happy to take a reasonable cut of 160 grand and just get out the case and not have any more to do with it, because I think he realized what was going on. So how do we account for the fact that a body is found and then ends up as cremains?
Bushman.
Mm-hmm. And
why is Bushman only there for 9 hours and never comes back?
Yeah. But we don't have any reports of any foul smell, do we? From that area.
Apparently, Kathleen Zellner says she has an affidavit from Travis Grohl that he claims to smell something. But I had yet to see this. She talks about it in a brief, but I would love to see it. I have not seen it.
Mm.
If anybody knows what that is, but I can't find it. It's not in any of her briefs. She talks about it in her previous filing.
Mm. Yeah, I'm going to say I think I probably have heard of an account of a foul smell, and it's not just obviously up at Zander Road. No, yeah. No. But when the bones end up in that state, you wonder how that came to be. We're told that it could have been in a burn barrel. So was it a case of find the body, and that was one of the changes of plans? We're gonna burn the body in order to have it happen on the 31st, because by sheer luck, Stephen had a bonfire that night, and
he burned, like Alan said it the best. You should have never burned them tires.
Yeah.
He was burning the brush anyways.
Yeah.
Well, look what they had before they had Brendan. Every speck of evidence they had could easily have been argued as being planted. They had no proof of how she was killed. Even if she's been killed, she's still just a missing person. But all right, away, it shifts to a homicide investigation. When they have, my callback goes on the news and says we found her car. Yeah, but there's no signs of foul play.
Mm.
She's still just a missing person. They all show no emotion.
Well, I mean, yeah, but I mean, he's grieving. The grieving process has started for him, and it could last days,
weeks.
Well, it's very strange that it's a grieving process.
If the bones would have came back as not Teresa's, his response is the best. It'd be one big mess. Well, they tried. They went after not just Jody. You got Marie too. Eventually, parts of hers Then they brought them. They did. The Kratz was after whatever he could to keep him from getting released. He was like, he tried to fight the fact that his public defender was going to walk away, and because he had money and he could afford representation, and Kratz tried to stop that, but the judge put through the motion and made Dean the lawyer. because they were trying to stop him from getting his money. When they brought the civil lawsuit, that was his money that would afford. Because once they knew that he was going to get an actual good attorney, they knew they were fucked. So they're doing everything in their power trying to find something else on him, or trying to get somebody to say something that would implicate him even more. They failed until they found Brendan. And right before they take Brendan down, that Friday, the check, everything gets transferred. Dean gets his money. Everybody's paid. That Monday, they take Brendan in. They throw Steven in the hole. He can't talk to nobody. And then he sees the sheriff. And what's the sheriff tell him? Oh, we talked to your nephew. He spilled his guts. He told us everything. He's like, told you what? Like, Steven even tells Barb, like, if I did this, your son's guilty too, because he was with me the whole time. We didn't do this. We burned some brush. I burned 4 tires. I talked to Jody. I went to sleep. He came, took photos, left. There's phone calls we have not got. They're not releasing them. We're between 1 for the 3rd at 9:33 p.m. when Jody calls Steven's house, because we have the earlier call on the 3rd when she calls Dolores' house. So we only have certain phone calls from certain lines. They've been FOIA'd. They're being denied. I learn something new every day. I'm constantly learning about this case. There's something. I mean, just these jail calls alone. There's 842 of them.
And also, Millbillie, as you were saying to me just a few hours ago, the fact that Stephen Avery says to Barb, well, if I did it, then Brendan must have done it with me because he was with me all this time. And they use that fact that Stephen has just stated. Brendan was with me all that time.
Well, he says in the calls, they were by the fire, sitting on the golf cart.
And actually then able to use his words against him. Yeah, I'll just take you back a step. We were talking about Jody in the convoluted Brian. We've actually got letters sent by Ken Kratz to Jody's attorney, basically complaining about the fact that she's the fact that she's got an attorney. Who hired you? Who asked you to be involved in this? What are you doing? Trying to prevent my investigators from interviewing Jody. Gets quite nasty about that. And also to take you back to the finding of the bullet. Remember that according to Ken Kratz in the press conference, it was the reason they were able to find the bullet was because of the degree of specificity with which Brendan was able to tell them where to look.
Well, if you listen to these jail calls, you hear Steven say he was picking up shell casings, that Bobby Dassey was always shooting his 22. You know Steven's burn barrel with the bullet holes in it?
Yeah.
That was from Bobby and Jody shooting at the burn barrel.
Yeah.
So Steven would pick up the shell casings and throw them in the garage, because he said when he went and cut the grass, when they hit the lawnmower, they go flying.
Like projectiles there.
Yeah.
Is that in a call with Lowley Johnson?
I think it's with Rolly, yes.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I've listened to so many calls that it's hard.
In actual fact, bizarrely, putting holes in the bottom of the burn barrel will actually help it burn better anyway, won't it?
Yeah.
But they were just.
Jody say multiple times that she's the last person to use his burn barrel.
Yeah.
And are those rivets they find? Could those have been Jody's clothes?
Possibly, yeah.
Why didn't the defense try to use her? Yeah, but doesn't mean that the only person that wore those pants in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
I
Well, I sent you a quote from Laura Riccardi, and I'll repeat it here so that everybody can hear it, because I think this is pretty good. She says, well, it comes from an article. It says the duo, as in Laura and Moira, hit back at Kratz's comments about not wanting to, quote, muddy up a perfectly good conspiracy movie with what actually happened. And Laura says, well, this is coming from a man who argued in closing arguments that reasonable doubts are for innocent people. This is coming from a man who said, so what if the key was planted? This is coming from a man who was forced out of office for admittedly sending sexual suggestive text messages to a domestic victim whose case he was prosecuting. She says, we are confident. We stand by the project we did. It is thorough. It is accurate. It is fair. That is why it took us 10 years to produce it. As I've said before, Ken Kratz is entitled to his own opinion, but he's not entitled to his own facts.
Yeah, it sure did take him a long time because they were there from damn near the beginning.
Yeah.
Thankful she reached out to Stephen, and thankful that Stephen and Dolores accepted her invitation to do what she did, because otherwise we wouldn't be talking right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I must admit,
because otherwise Stephen Avery would just be another name.
Yeah.
Then Making a Murder came out. Like, I still meet people every day. I live here in Wisconsin. They have no clue what Making a Murder is or who Stephen Avery is.
Yeah.
Whatsoever. And the people that I do, majority of them have never watched Making a Murder, and they just know about what they remember happening back in 2005 and 6 during the trial. And it was on the news every single day. You couldn't get away from it. In the papers.
Yeah.
National news.
Yeah. It is fortunate that Laura has a background in law, doesn't she? That was what, she was involved in a lawyer's office, and that has definitely helped her in this in this filmmaking project.
Okay, so this is going to conclude the first segment of my chat with Millbillie and Paul. There was an interesting bit at the end talking about Laura Ricciardi and her response to Kratz and basically his book. Pardon me. But and I thought it was very interesting. Look, like Kratz is, she says that Kratz is entitled to his own opinion, but he's not entitled to his own facts. And I mean, it just goes along with everything we've been saying about Kratz, is that he's all about manipulation and deflection and misdirection. And I mean, that's where he thrives. That's what he's about. And that's shown over and over and over in his actions, to be perfectly honest. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and say goodnight, folks. Like I said, we're going to have another segment with Millbillie and Paul tomorrow, unfortunately without, my audio. So I will be inserting bits where I will explain certain things. So just like I did tonight. Like I said, I'm sorry again, but I hope you guys were able to enjoy it anyway, because like I said, Paul and Millbillie had a lot of brilliant things to say, and I certainly didn't want to let that, I didn't want that to end up being, unreleased. And so I thought it was all, really a great talk with these guys too. So I just felt like, this was at least one way I could share some of the stuff that they were saying while we were chatting, and you guys could, hear it for yourselves. So, all right, that's it for this one. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll see you.